Hey, Guy 45 here, and today we're going to talk about one of your favorite subjects, irregular verbs, right? Don't you hate those irregular verbs? I prefer things kind of regular myself, but they exist, they're out there, and you've been dying for me to talk about those irregular verbs. So here we are, ready to talk about them. Got a couple maybe on the board. Have you ever said something like that? I should not have threw my gun down. Might have broken that thing. Just should not have threw it down. Great grammar, huh? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here. Irregular verbs. I've even got the principal parts of a verb up here. We're going to talk a little bit about that. This is important stuff, Almost as important as ballistics. It has come to my attention, especially in the last 15, maybe 20 years, that people are ignoring the past participle form of a lot of verbs. The irregular verbs, of course, is where it's so noticeable, and it's where it's a problem. I have heard a lot of educated people, smart people, misusing this, whether it's on talk shows, in person, sports talk, podcasts, it's all over the place. I started noticing it, again, more so the last decade or two. When I was teaching, I started noticing that. And I noticed it among my students as well, that they were they had a bigger gap there in their knowledge of just some of the common verbs. I'm not sure what it is. I don't think it's because of texting or emailing and all that kind. We blame everything on computers and, texting, all that, but I don't know. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but I really did. It was something I could just really notice. It became more and more clear, and so I found myself in class addressing it more than I had to in the past. Really, I don't know what caused it. It might have been something from outer space or whatever it was. But anyway, the point today is, what I want to make is it comes down to a handful of verbs that creates the biggest problem. I used to stress that with my students. You may be really, really smart. You might even be really well educated, because your knowledge of grammar is not necessarily directly proportionate to how smart you are or even your education level sometimes. But the problem is, you're reflecting poorly on your education when you use some of these incorrectly, because they jump out at a lot of people. That's the point, okay? A lot of things having to do with English grammar. There's gray area. Some things matter, like using lie and lay correctly. How many people do you know use lie and lay correctly? Get into the past tense of lie and lay. Look at that one. It's kind of crazy. If you use it correctly, people will think you're using it incorrectly sometimes, okay? Because so many people use it wrong. But, and again, I'm not the ultimate expert in all this. I did teach it for a while. And again, you don't want to judge people on necessarily how they speak. Some of the best people I've ever known did not know good grammar. Okay, some of the smart people I've known, some of the best people in terms of ethics, so you don't want to judge people because they use the wrong verb, or they don't maybe speak as well as you do or I do, or that sort of thing. So let's not go down let's not be thinking in that direction. But by the same token, if you want to, experience some success maybe in your career, you'd like to get that job you're interviewing for, there are a lot of environments where you don't want to make these mistakes, okay? And that was one of the things I stressed to my students. I was at a college prep school, and there are some things that if you misuse them, it immediately kind of tags you as, oh, didn't make it past 7th grade, huh? Really, in a lot of people's minds. So you don't want to be that guy, that girl, that woman, that man, whatever. All right, so let's get to it. Irregular verbs. They are called irregular because they are kind of irregular. They don't fit the pattern that a lot of words do that are verbs. Like, we're talking about painting this room. Well, I painted yesterday and I should have painted it before. It's not a problem. Painted. It's not a problem. What's in a walk? I walked around yesterday, and I have walked every day this week. You just put an ED on walk, ED on paint, and a lot of verbs are like that. They're regular, okay? It's those weird irregular ones where you don't just add an ed to it, you change the word, like eat. I like to eat. I ate yesterday, and I have eaten before. So that word changes quite a bit as you go from present past to past participle. That's not one a lot of people make mistakes with, but some do. You listen to little kids talk. They're the ones that'll, they have trouble with them sometimes when they're really, really young, because this irregularity of some of the verbs, it's reflected in them as much as anybody. So anyway, irregular. What's another one? Well, the one on the board, through. Most of you know what that should be, right? Come on now. Even if you're in Kentucky, what would that be? Thrown. Right? I should have not have thrown my gun down. So let me erase that, but that would obviously be thrown. Throw. Threw yesterday, and I have thrown. All right, now why am I talking about this? Well, for the reasons I already expressed there. Some of these things, if you were to say that, if you were at a shooting match, I should not have threw my gun down. A lot of people look at, oh yeah, really? Where'd you study? So you wouldn't want to say that, and that was pretty obvious, I think. I hope. There are some that almost strike me that way, and now part of it is because I taught this for several years, and I'm just more aware of it. But the thing is, this isn't. Some of these are not those gray areas. Like there are some words where it's okay. This is not a carbine, carbine issue, a route, creek. Some people say it this way, others say it that way. Don't judge them. Don't make fun of them. That's just kind of the way it is, the way they were brought up here and it's said. We're not talking about that sort of stuff. We're talking about people. I can tell you, I don't know how many times in the last year I've heard somebody say something like the word. Let's go with the verb go. How's that for a verb? The present tense would be go. I want to go somewhere. Past is what? Goed? No. How about went? I went somewhere yesterday. All right. Now we're getting into trouble with past participle, because I have heard so many people say, yeah, I should have went over there and cleaned up that mess. I should have went over there and cleaned up my gun, Should have went over there and got the gun lube, or I should have went there yesterday. That's bad. That's bad. How common is that verb? I mean, I've got a note here for some of the more common ones I want to look at, like run, another really common verb. And this is actually what I'm holding here is something I used in class. I had all these irregular verbs, and we just literally worked on these, and we would make up sentences and just trying to get them in the kids' ears, okay, middle schoolers' ears, to hear them used correctly. So I want to go for a run, or I want to run now. And yesterday, what did I do? I ran, okay? Now, excuse my penmanship, it's terrible, I know, especially standing on this side. So I ran. Now, what did I do when I use a helping verb? I have, and that's what the past participle is, and that's the crux of all this. You have to, or if you have, has, or had, or a contraction. I've, is a contraction for I have, or we've, contraction for we have. So, and that's where I think a lot of people miss it, right? So if you've got a have, has, had, you've got a helping verb there, an auxiliary verb, or you've got it as a part of a contraction, it doesn't matter, okay? I, apostrophe VE, means I have. Same thing, all right? So when you have that, you've got to use the past participle form of the verb go. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how it sounds to you. If that's the form of that word, that's what you've got to use, okay? And the past participle of go happens to be what? I heard you. I even heard somebody in Kentucky say it. Gone, all right? Past participle of run. Ran is I have run. Okay? Yep, right, very well. The past participle form of that verb is what you have to use. It doesn't matter how it sounds to you. It doesn't matter what your neighbor says, or your brother, or even your parents, or anybody else. It's run if you have a helping verb. So, and this is one of the things we used to do. We just make up sentences, didn't matter what it was, and just read them aloud in class and go all the way around the room. Just hear it used correctly with these verbs that people do have trouble with. And just make up any old thing and say it, Like I should have run the 3-mile race. I should have run it. Not I should have ran it. I think these two I hear misused as often as any. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people, I could even name names on sports talk shows, people who went through college, people who are 30 or 40 years old, played professional sports, and now they're involved in sports, commentating, that sort of thing. Yeah, he should have ran the ball. He should have ran the ball instead of passed. He should have ran the ball instead of passed. Really? I think he should have run the ball. Didn't I hear have? Should have run the ball, not should have ran the ball. Okay, just like I should have went there yesterday. No, should have gone. I've gone there before. We've gone there before. We've run the ball. Another good one, just to illustrate, drink. Okay, what's past tense of drink? Yesterday I drank. Most of you. A-N-K. I drank some hoppies, right? Yesterday I drank. And it looks like an X. I drank. And then I have drunk. People are afraid to say the word drunk for some reason. All right. I have drunk. I have drunk my orange juice, Mom. Have drunk. That's correct. I've drunk all the Gatorade. I've drunk it all. That is correct. We've drunk all the water. That is correct. You cannot say I've drank. Well, you can. I've, not correctly, I've drank that before. Watch this. I have drunk some of my water now. I took a drink. I drank some of it. I have drunk it before. Doesn't matter if it sounds wrong to you. That's correct. Now, with some past participles, granted, there's a couple of choices. Okay, like it just depends. Like dive and dove. You get some different words that maybe it's acceptable using this context and that. I'm focusing on the ones there is no other choice. You don't ever say I've went somewhere, I've ran somewhere, I've drank my juice. That's totally incorrect. Now, I sound kind of nerdy probably to you, and there's a good reason for it, because again, these are very common. I mean, think about it. How often do you need to use a form of go or run or drink? And some other wonderful ones on this list are like write, wrote, written. I've written that before, not I've wrote a letter. Ride, rode, ridden. Drive is another good one. I hear that misused a lot. Drive. I drove yesterday, and I have drove around that city before. Oh man, it hurts my ears. Don't say that. I've driven. I have. We've driven to Atlanta before. We've driven, okay? Not we've drove. What's some other? Saw, there's one some people miss. I have seen, not I have saw. Okay? These things, the reason, again, making a big deal out of it and prepared an exquisite lesson today for you here, is that we use all of this so often, and in our speech especially, and it is one of the most common problems that I see that is glaring. Now, you don't want to follow somebody around and worry about everything they say or the grammar, or we don't want to become too overly self-conscious. We want to be ourselves and all that. But it doesn't matter. Around people who have some smidgen of education, and they might be interviewing you for a job one day, you do not want to say that, I've driven here before, I've drove here before. If you're going to Atlanta, Dallas to interview for a job, and you fly in, you get a rental car, you make it time for your interview, really nice position you're trying to get here, nice job, interested in it, you really want this job. And one of the early things you say to the interviewer is something about how you really like Dallas, and but I've never really, you say I've never really drove in the city much, but I really like Dallas. Well, the person interviewing you is probably going to say, okay, he's going to check a little box you can't see. It's going to be, don't call him back, her back, okay, because you have drove around the city before. I mean, it might seem a little too picky to you, but it's an indicator of how much pride you take in, I guess, your speech, your education, your level. Were you asleep in 7th grade? Did you sleep through the 6th grade? That really, it kind of screams that you slept through the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, or whatever. If you're walking around saying, you know, I should have went there before, I should have ran there, I should have, no, I drank, a lot of people misuse drank, I guess, but these other verbs, drove, yeah, I should have drove there before. It's all black and white, okay? So we're not going to spend an hour. Of course, I always say that, and we spend an hour, right? But I want to emphasize these things to you, and then to look it up. Because some of these verbs, there's some I'll have to look at, not on this list, but there are some weird verbs and irregular verbs that, okay, I didn't realize that either one of those was okay, you know. And if you Google like irregular verbs or just find a grammar book, you'll find a list as high as this wall of a lot of different verbs like this that can be a problem for people. And just look them up. It's a click away on your phone if you have a smartphone, okay? Now, if you have a dumb phone, it probably gets all these wrong. But just look them up if you're not sure, if you're writing especially, lots of times. We all make mistakes speaking because we're just like I'm doing now. I'm not really, you know, there's no script. I'm just speaking as weird things come to my mind. So we grant people some slack. But not so much on this kind of thing. You know, again, it's one thing to say ain't. You know, I'll say that occasionally as a joke almost, but we know what ain't means, and that's more of a cultural thing, or just how informal you want to be. You're being a little, maybe you might think someone's a little too informal if they're saying ain't all the time. Just depends on you, your family, where you grow up, and that sort of thing. I don't care where you have grown up, oh, I'm sorry, I used correct grammar. Where you have grown up, if you're using the past tense for the past participle, you've got a helping verb in that sentence, a contraction, well, not in the sentence, but with the verb. That's bad. It really is. It really is. It's just dead wrong, and that's not the big problem. The problem is for you or me, if we're saying things like that, the problem is most people, if they have any education at all, and I'm just saying most, not all of them, most people, it's going to hit their ear. Okay, it's going to hit their ear, and they are going to judge you a little bit. Okay, I mean, they may be their best buddy and they may like you better than anybody in the world, but it's going to be a clear indicator of how much you absorbed during the educational process. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much longer, but some of the other verbs like write, wrote, written. You know, I should have written. I should have driven there. I should have thrown the ball. I should have seen that coming. Not saw. I should have seen. I should have seen that great deal on an AR-15. And I should have bought it. Okay? I should have bought it. I should have brought my own AR-15, not brung. You know, those are all in lists. That's the thing. This is cut and dried. Everybody's not a Shakespeare, an Emerson, but this stuff, it's just clearly cut and dried. Think of it as math. You're writing a sentence, and you're using one of these or any of these I've mentioned, swim, swam, swum, whatever it is, and you're writing along, say, yeah, I should never have swam in that dirty water. I should never have swum in that dirty creek. You're writing along. You could just look it up. Okay, I've got a helping verb, so let's see, what should that be? Oh yeah, it's good. You know it's going to be past participle. It has to be the third form. Well, there's actually four, the ing form, but that doesn't create a problem. So I always dwell on the three forms, not waste time with another one really in most cases. So you know it's a past participle because you're using a helping verb. Okay? I should not have swum in that dirty water. I should not have swam in that dirty water. So all you have to do is look up the past participle, and it doesn't matter what it is of swim. No matter what the spelling is of it, what the word is, it could be a crazy word. It doesn't matter. Whatever the book, the internet tells you the past participle is of swim, that's correct because you know you want the past participle. When I was teaching, we used to make up a verb and then just give it three different forms, or four technically, but the three main forms, and you would know how to use it because if you are talking past tense, it's the second form. If it's past participle, it's whatever's over here, okay, drunk. So it doesn't matter to you if drunk hits you the wrong way. It's still, Mom, I've drunk my juice. Okay, I've drunk my juice. I've shot my gun. I've sat there before. I've thrown that ball too many times. I've ridden to Atlanta before. I've driven to Atlanta before. Okay? I've eaten here before. I ate there yesterday, and I have eaten there before. And I'm making a big deal out of saying that because I think it helps to actually speak it out loud and get those words in your head. Boy, there are some people, again, I could name names on talk shows in the Nashville area that I would like to grab them and say, would you please just say, so-and-so has run the ball too many times in this game. Has run the ball, okay? Not has ran the ball. Talking about football, all right? So by the way, irregular verbs went longer than I meant to, but I get carried away with grammar because there's really not much more important in your life than grammar. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. It really is. So there are things in English grammar that will peg you as not necessarily uneducated, but someone who doesn't take much pride in how you speak. That's the kind of thing you want to avoid. Yeah, there's technical things about it. Our language is complicated. You know, I make mistakes. I'm sure at times I don't, focus on every little single word all the time. When you're talking fast, extemporaneously, you just, you make mistakes. But there are some things you don't. You're pulling out a drank or a ran or a went when it should be past participle. It's slapping people in the face. They're catching it. So my advice is look it up. Okay, and make sure and get it straight. Get you print out that list like I have here. I just stuck in my pocket. I guess some of the most common words like that, and kind of get it in your head. Oh, there is a word. I know people. These same people I've been picking on. I've never heard them say the word run. Don't they think it exists, or drunk, or gone, or driven? If there is the word driven that exists in our language, don't you think you should probably be using it? There are some people I know, I don't want to pick on rural people. I am a rural people, right? I live out in the country. But I think there are people, maybe with lower education, but living out in the hills, that possibly in their lives have never used the word. In their lives, they've never used the word driven or eaten. It always comes out, I should have ate that, I should have drove over there. Okay? And again, the truth hurts. But if you're saying those sorts of things with drove or driven or whatever, you're sounding like them. So don't do that. Don't do that. If you can't be educated, if you can't be well educated, do what I do. At least try to sound like you are. Life is good.